and change you'll ever get is from God. It's going to come from the Lord, or it's not going to come at all. It's going to come when you admit that you can't do it and that you've got to have His help.
Gentlemen, you cannot pull an Adam and say the woman did it. Don't ever say it's the woman's fault. God made us in a way that we're able to absorb every wrongdoing of a woman and carry that burden and indeed repair anything that ever broke in the home. Do you know that? It will try you to your limits, but you're built to carry that until the Lord repairs it. Do you hear me? So don't blame things on the woman. Assume responsibility. Because men, if we are loyal, if we set that loyalty standard within ourselves, not forcing anybody else to do it, listen, this is key. This is why dating. People love to date. No one likes to get married. Because marriage has become like a prisoner or something like that. Why? Because God has been taken out of the marriage. Marriage was given so that people could be free, not so they can be in bondage, but because of man's traditions and rules and this spirit of control and offense in the earth, it's all been perverted. Men, render your best and get ready to carry everything. You're built for that. You're built to carry everything. That's what you're built to. Don't look at the woman and say she did it. You're built to carry everything. In the garden, what would have happened if Adam would have never given in to his wife in a misdeed? Adam could have covered Eve. He could have covered Eve. But because Adam gave in to Eve, Adam had to endure the curse also. See how that works? Be a covering for your family and carry everything in the name of Christ. As Christ carried the sins of the world, carry your family. Carry your family and be determined to carry your family. Ladies, don't expect your husband to know anything about you. As you walk in your standards, you can show everyone who you are. Now let me give the small truth, ladies. You have been redeveloping who you are multiple times throughout your life. You got to stop doing that. Don't develop who you are. Accept who God made you to be. Investigate those things you actually love, those things you actually like, those spiritual things you actually cling to. That's how you learn who you are, not by adopting everything that you see on television or in a book or that somebody else is doing. You've got to keep your eyes out of your next door neighbor's house. In other words, don't look at somebody else's standard and then make that standard yours. You should never do that. Every woman should be unique, not a replica of somebody else. Women won't tell that one, guys, but they know they have changed multiple times. They'll put on a new person, and you won't even know it, but they know it, and they need not ever do that. God made them someone that will surprise them if they will only seek it out. You'll only find that in Christ. You're not going to find it anywhere else. And the good thing about Christ is what? Today is a new day, and yesterday no longer exists. You know what that means? If today is a new day, then not one soul has been left behind. And today is an opportunity for all. I want you guys to know something that a long time ago we had a discussion about. Somebody asked about some serious events during the end days, specifically regarding the fall of society. And when they asked about the fall of society, I told you guys some very specific things. I said, when you stop seeing important people and people who really have the wherewithal to run this country, when you stop seeing those individuals, it's because they're gone. They began to pull people into specific protected places. And the reason for that is because we're going to have a continuation of America, a continuation of Europe, a continuation of all these different nations. But in order to do that, they have to split the nations. They have to take the important individuals who care about the countries, who know exactly what to do in just about every single event. They have to pull these people into very special places, and nobody would ever see them again. They would essentially take them out of circulation. If you look at the world right now, it appears that most of the people who are in leadership should not be in leadership, just pure and simple. And it's also, we discussed something else, because somebody said, well, wouldn't everybody know? And I said, no, because people are going to lose their ability for sober things. People won't be able to tell because they're going to be so intertwined with some of the things happening. They'll just join in with the whole club, and they'll just do everything as normal because they want to prop up the idea of normalcy to everybody. But the telltale signs are people who should not be governing nations will govern nations. People who should not negotiate foreign policy will negotiate foreign policy, things of that nature, right? As a consequence of leadership, societies would begin to crumble. And it would appear to be, and this is what I said a long time ago, it would appear to look like things are getting out of control, like lawlessness is really about to just fall away. And people will begin to do everything they want to. I did tell everybody that most people would be armed. People would, crime would start to increase at an exponential rate. But the important people you would no longer see. The people who had true resolve, and they knew what they were doing in the countries, they would just up and disappear one day. Well, if you look at the selection of those we have in leadership, many of them should not be in leadership. They shouldn't go higher than where they are. They're stepping into roles that they're just acting a part. They really are acting a part. If you look at some of the successes in America, we've had no successes. In truth, we've not had any. We've been stagnant for a very long time. And it's incredible that a lot of people are not able to see that there's been little to no change for a very long time. There's been propaganda and hype, but there's been no substantive change in things. The economy, every year, of course, there's an economic collapse. Every year, this has happened every single year. Somebody announces an economic collapse. And every single year, the same thing takes place. All the experts come out and they say, we're going to have an economic collapse. And after a few bills are passed, all of a sudden nobody talks about it anymore. And then it's back to zero as usual. In the meanwhile, the prices of items have been going up at a very steady pace. The truth is they can't afford to pay people what they're paying them because of distribution. I want you guys to know something about money. This system of money is very fragile. In the Bible, and we're not doing the theologian eschatology thing here. It's not what we're doing here. But in the Bible, I'm using this as a reference of something. In the Bible, you have the seals that are opened. And I know a lot of people think that Revelation 6:6 is about an economic collapse, right? I know that's what they think. Well, he opens the third seal, and a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hands. But these are balances. And he says, with the balances, he heard a voice in the midst for beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see that thou hurt not the oil and the wine. What people fail to realize is that many years ago, we did not have a global economy. In other words, if a nation fell, it would not affect another nation. We don't have that anymore. If one nation falls, the stock market tanks. It affects everything. So while everybody's looking at this being an economic collapse, I never really saw it that way. But everybody has their own opinion. I saw it as an established global economic system. And in truth, right now, it wasn't that way before. Because again, if a nation fell back then, it would not affect another nation. In this case, the nation we have today, if China fell, it would affect everybody so bad. If the U.S. fell, it would affect everybody so bad. If Europe fell, it would affect everybody so bad that recovery would almost be impossible. Why? Because you have to understand the stock market too. Suppose somebody called the debt on any one nation out there. If they said, okay, we want you guys to pay all your debts today. How is the country going to pay those debts? They don't pay their debts with money. Do you know that? It's not what they do. It's another set of books for paying debts. That's why the debt can be so high, and yet everything can continue to function like normal. Now, I know people get angry at debt and everything else. It's because they have a lot vested in the public markets. But the public markets are based off faith. And what I mean by that is this. So long as everybody feels that they can get the upper hand, they're going to continue to invest and put their money in investments, which causes everybody else to have a lot of money. But if something were to happen where nobody trusted the markets, and let's say the money situation never changed. In fact, let's say the money system was perfect, that there was no debt, and all of a sudden people got nervous about the markets. Do you not understand they can cause an economic collapse in the markets because they feel bad? I hope you understand that. People start pulling out their money, it causes other people to lose their money. This is a 6th tier program. It's not 1st, 2nd, or 3rd tier. This is 6th tier. That's when the public can follow the investments of very real corporations, but the money in those corporations is only in there by faith and by how people feel. If everybody gets nervous and they start taking their own personal money out of the markets, it will affect somebody else. And then this will in turn affect other markets and other nations. Before you know it, everybody is down. So what I'm telling you, an economic collapse in the markets could happen because everybody wakes up and feels bad. If they feel nervous. Now, everybody wants an answer as to why they never let secrets come out. That's why. Because if secrets come out, it's going to make people nervous. If they get nervous, they're going to lose confidence. If they lose confidence, they're going to pull their money out. If they pull their money out, then the monopoly money goes, that's not real money. It's just a note. It's an IOU. It's a promise. It's not real money. People start pulling that out, which causes other people to lose money. That's all. That's what the stock market is. That's what all this stuff is. When it comes to real debt, there is a real money. There's real money, but you'll never ever get your hands on the real money. Gold used to be the backing of money. It used to be the backing of a nation's money. Gold did. All that is different now. Money is a made-up system. Something that doesn't really exist. Something that is more like an allocation system. An allocation of resources system is what it is. A control system. Where they control the allocation of resources. That's all that is. That's why we read in Revelation how that the people in the kingdom of the beast were so happy. I assure you they did not have an economic collapse, did they? That's why, these Persian kings were so rich. And they continue to be rich until Christ came. That's why Babylon was so rich until it was destroyed. Did you hear me? Until it was destroyed. It was rich. In fact, it was rich up until the very day when people wailed for her, seeing smoke coming up from her. It was rich. See what that is? Right now, they're having a changeover of economics into a system that will never fail because it's not run like the old one. People were born into a system where we don't realize that these systems we, utilize and depend on are made-up systems, man-made, made-up systems. They're all intimately tied together. Going back to the SEALs, the establishment of this global economy did not take place until the end of the 1980s. Did you guys know that? In fact, it actually took place in 1996. That's when it took place, in 1996. 1996 was the beginning of the global economic system. That's when everything was tied together. That wasn't that long ago. And so when people are experts in finances, they understand a tier of the system. Not all tiers, but a tier of the system. That's what they understand. In Revelation, when it says he had a pair of balances in his hand, a measure of wheat for a penny, measure barley for a penny, and see thou heard not the oil or the wine. This wheat for a penny and barley for a penny, I know a lot of people look at that as inflation or something like that. The balances give it all away. Everything is based on this global economic system. Everything is based on this global economic system. The computers have allowed a global economic system. And now, by way of technology and computers, everything is intimately tied together. See how that goes hand in hand? It took computers to tie everything in, which is why when the oil prices start to fluctuate, markets do crazy things. The global markets do this. All that began in 1996. You can have all the backing in the world for all types of currency. It still can fail due to the lack of confidence of people. So it's very important that propaganda continue to go forward to give people a positive attitude behind the creation, behind the succession of these nations that are in the world. But make no mistake about it, it's all about to be altered. Remember, everything is linked by way of technology, computers. Everything right now is in a database. The money printed just represents nothingness. It's a note. That's all it is, a note in circulation. The real wealth and the real power is not based in money. It's based in control. This global economic system has been established. Technology links it together. The heart of the people determine if that sixth tier collapses or stands. Sure, we're going to have inflation and everything else. I call those corporate temper tantrums. It's a temper tantrum of corporations. They normally do this right before election seasons. All you have to do is start looking through the charts. You'll see it. Normally through election seasons, based on the little wars they have about this policy, that policy, which is in fact one corporation trying to get control over another corporation's assets. That's all it is. Once they settle all that out, all of a sudden everything goes back to normal by at least 2%. Though inflation never ceases, have you noticed? It's a buildup. Every time we have inflation, it continues to rise. Even in those times they said we did not have inflation, inflation was there. Because that term inflation is one of those made-up terms, and on the sixth tier, it means one thing, but at its root is something totally different. Because this is a man-made system governed by computers now. It's governed by computers. Even the gold being kept, that was kept outside. Something else has happened to the gold, which is why people of nations have that gold. Now, here's a big one. What would happen if all the people in America wanted to take most of their riches to another nation? What would happen to the country where they took all those riches to another nation? Here's what you may not realize. That has already happened a couple times and nothing took place. Why? Because it's a computer-based system. That's why. Money is real to people. Money is not real to those who govern it. It's only real to people because you pay a penalty for not having enough. If you don't have enough money, you can't get care, you can't get food, you can't get housing, you can't do anything. That does not apply to them. They don't utilize money like us. They go into a restaurant. There are people right now, they go into a restaurant, they don't pay anything. And nobody better ask them to pay anything. They walk in and walk out. They walk into any restaurant they want to and eat. They walk into any store, take any merchandise they want, and they leave. They don't pay anything and nothing is written down. Did you know that? They don't do any of that. They go into a hotel. They get booked. They don't pay anything. In fact, that room is marked red, which means it's kind of shut down, closed off, reserved, whatever the case is. They don't pay anything. There's people running around like that. Tens of thousands of people run around like that. They're from a different tier set. We operate on the control region, the sixth tier of a very complicated computer system. Artificial intelligence is coming out. It's going to be very important for the economic system. Why? Suppose AI recommends that you take your money out of one thing and put it in something else. That's what it's going to do for the beast system. It's going to essentially, and this is why a lot of billionaires are starting to speak up now, because they know what's about to happen. And what AI will do is suggest to the individual, not that it's going to make that individual rich, but it's going to take certain corporations down. It's going to take them down, take them out. It's going to cause people not to buy merchandise from them, not to have investments in them. That's how they take corporations down these days. That's the only way to do it. If they don't exist on that sixth tier, people won't accept them, thus they really don't exist. That means you can't have other people who are on payroll in view of the sixth tier that can get rich from it. Now it's an underground corporation. Now it's a lower tier corporation, which means nobody really sees it. The people still keep their money. It's just that you don't have an active part in society that way. You're not visible anymore. And they want to be visible. A lot of these corporations, they want to be visible because they sit like kings and queens. But the economy is very different than what they have trained anybody to believe. The economy right now is computer-based, set protocols, standards, methodologies, and practices. That's why experts have been saying all this time that a collapse is a month away and it never took place. Haven't you noticed? The experts now were saying it was a collapse and it never took place. The experts of the experts were saying there was collapse and nothing ever took place. I remember back in the housing bubble, the government got mad at the Lehman Brothers because their acquisition of certain companies was not supposed to ever take place. They had a discussion with some of the big G meetings on this, like the G8, G7, all these different things. They had a meeting on that. 5 months later, the Lehman Brothers went out of business. So did two of the banks that backed the Lehman Brothers. And there's something. They took them down like it was nothing. The Lehman Brothers were supposed to be a company that couldn't be touched, and they were an example to the rest of the world, to the rest on the I believe it was the fourth tier. They were used as an example of exactly what can happen through no confidence with people. The system, everything is being switched over to. Well, it takes even that control out of people's hands. The control will no longer be in your hands either. That means you can go to the markets and pull all your money out, and it won't affect the markets. That's what it means. When this other system is in play, you will no longer have an ability to affect the markets by pulling out all of your money. It's going to be governed very differently. It's changing right before your eyes, and the changeover is happening right now. So we've had a global economic system established. It's already been established. That started in 1996. Now we have the changeover. I believe they call it a one asset rule system. So essentially what that means is on your first through the sixth tier, you'll have one controller. That's never happened before. And through the advent of AI, everything will be changed. Now, as far as the rest of these things happening, scripted is a good word. Let me give you guys one caution. In this conversation, keep these terms that I'm telling you. People will have to catch up to them. You have experts who have not heard these terms yet, but they will, and they will talk about them. And when they start talking about them, they're going to be the experts on them, so they think. I'm just telling you about these things now to get it out of the way, because the experts don't even know about these terms yet. And don't ask me how I know them if they don't know them. I'm not special by any means. Seriously, I'm not. But these things will come about. They're already happening, which means you've got to get prepared. The financial system is one thing, but that's something you have greater concerns. The greater concern involves the human element that nobody can control, and they know it. If the true elitist could control the human element, there'd be no need to have safe places. There has to be safe places first because of lawlessness, because of people taking power into their own hands. Interestingly enough, a long time ago in COT, we talked about people no longer listening to their governments, didn't we? How they would reject government, how people would see a split, the first split in government, how the southern and northern states would constitute the first split, and they would have a representative for each. It's happening right now before your eyes. Right now. Essentially, this is what we face, and this is why I will not take sides. See, I already happen to know because God named what he's a part of and what he's not a part of. He is not a part of violence. He's not a part of any of this stuff that they have practiced in the earth. He's not a part of that. This is man's doing. In America is a good example of that. You have two polarized sides. You know what? In fact, who's in the middle? If you understand politics, who's in the middle in the USA? Nobody is. It's either far right or far left. Haven't you noticed? Nobody is in the middle. Nobody's in the middle. When has that ever happened? How has it gotten so polarized? Now we live in a time where people follow ideologies. They don't follow what's good for the people. They follow ideologies. Now, instead of defending those who can't defend themselves, they're defending their leadership's ideologies. Only because the leadership speaks the ideology of those selected individuals on the far right or far left. This will constitute a war because there's no peace declaration in these far elements. The middle has been taken out. That's missing. That's gone. And it won't come back. It's gone, and it's about to get a lot worse. See, while they're fighting, things have been happening in the world. While they're fighting, they have blacked out the news for everybody else. You guys can't get Reuters. You can't get news from Pakistan and places like that like you need to without it being sanitized. So they emphasize this media battle that's happening. They're trying to say that one is more trustworthy than the other. Although, here's my take on both sides. You ready? There's a side that refuses to call racism, and there's a side that refuses to call gayism an abomination. And both sides claim they're doing the work of God. It's kind of like these people who say, the apostles didn't write Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Do you guys know the history on that for people who say that? They have no idea what they're believing in. My goodness. They believe somebody else wrote it. I don't subscribe to any of that nonsense. All that is conjecture. And if they knew the source of that it came from someone who ultimately said Jesus is not Jesus, the same one who put that information out, now they have a lot of people following it. People actually believe that. Now they're saying that Jesus is not Jesus because a lot of ideologies are floating around now. And people, I'm telling you right now, they're changing the gospel of Jesus Christ is what they're doing. There's a war on the gospel right now. But to understand that, you have to understand the history behind it. We're centric on Christ. It's important that everybody be able to be exactly who they are in the freedom of Christ. And while everybody's trying to prove things they couldn't possibly know, we're going to stick to Christ and continue to have revelation from him. And people's situations will continue to change. That's a blessing to me when people's kids come back, when their homes are in repair, when the impossible happens. And we get that every single week. My goodness, here at COT, we get that every single week. And it's because people are seeking Christ for themselves. That's why it's happening. It's because people are turning back to Christ, not turning to man, not turning to me, not turning to anybody else, but they're turning back to Christ. And when they do that, there's a notable difference in their households. These people who start following this track of this religious thing, this certain type of doctrine that has crept in every single place you can see it, these theologians And some of these, among these theologians, are atheists, hidden atheists, who do not believe in Christ, but they're in the institutions, and they are the ones putting out a bunch of this rhetoric. The historical figures who fought against the Bible being, in fact, they said that Hebrews should be removed, Revelation should be removed, named a couple more, and they tried to actually get them removed because they said the apostles did not write Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that somebody else came along later and wrote that. They actually subscribed to that. Now, people tout this because they got it. It has one origin, not 3, not 4, not 5. It has one origin. And when you find out who the origin is, that's when you start to say, that's a doctrine that doctrine can't be here in this house. Guys, haven't you noticed I have an issue with all things that mankind has done that turned into an outright an abomination to the living God? I have an issue with that. And I will not tolerate nor replicate that stuff here. That's not what the Lord called me for. But you have people out there, that's what they honestly believe. You're going to have to learn some things the hard way. But for the rest of the people here who are Christ-centric, right? Not with these doctrines, not with these undertones of these doctrines, but those who are Christ-centric, there's some preparations we have to have. 4 inches closer every day is going to catch people off guard. In my humble opinion, nothing will hold it off this time. It's likely to spread beyond its own borders very quickly. The tensions are going to rise globally, and they will escalate from there. And we have some things to contemplate and to prepare in truth. The one thing I will never do is advise anybody to act on speculation. We don't act on speculation. That's foolishness. In this case, we need the truth, not theory, but truth. I don't know about you, but I believe that our Father still gives revelation of the truth. That's what I believe. And with the elements the Lord has blessed us with, because we have feet on the ground in many different places. We have an absolute first seat, ringside to these happenings. And it's right now, these contentions are unlike any other time in history except Pearl Harbor. See, in Pearl Harbor, before it was hit, the opposition had already launched their plan. The people didn't know it until the ships blew up. But the plan had been launched a week prior, or a couple weeks prior. And before that, the plans had been solidified a year before. And that's a whole year. That same thing is happening now. The plans have been solidified 2 years ago. The operations have gone into motion. The results will be here soon. Once you put an operation in motion, you don't call it back. You don't recall it. There is no recall. Once it's in motion, it's going to stay in motion until it accomplishes what it set out to accomplish. There is no country that will be exempt this time. It will not be confined within anybody's regions. This will be worldwide. That's why it's important we have these preparations, open talks, lots of meetings, serious prayer time. The real gospel, not any made-up gospel, but the real gospel that requires all of us. In COT, it's important that just one person does not dictate all of COT. That's very important, but by way of a council of a lot, we'll have that truth. It's not going to come through just me and that's it. It can never work that way. That's not what's purposed. I can set an initial standard, light an initial fire, but it will take the counsel. And in that counsel, through prayer, through revelation, through the Lord's way, not through divination, not through any of those ways that mankind currently uses, because everything they have sought to do has failed. Haven't you noticed? They're supposed to be advanced, and we're still paying for medication. Doctors are still trying to cheat people who are broken. They're still taking advantage of the poor and the broken. That's why you have to pay for medications. They say they want to help you, like in a commercial. Call us. We want to help you. But you know, a hospital is not going to help you unless you're about to pay out some money. It's kind of like those denture commercials. They want to help you, right? They want to get you smiling again. But if you don't have any money, they can't do anything for you. Somebody says, do we all constitute the council like you do? That's exactly what I mean when I say the core family. See, the core family of COT is those people are Christ-centric. These ideologies and theories where people believe these weird things, they can't be on the inside of the family. You know what the truth is? The truth is we do not know. That's what the truth is. You don't know. That's what the truth is. And if a person can't admit that small truth, yet they'll stand for the writings of someone that's not Jesus Christ, We can't have that. And that's the reason why. Just imagine if a person advocated some man's book and they would just, chew people out and get an attitude with people over what somebody else thought. Those are the very people we don't need. We need people who will stand for the words of Christ, who is not going to sit there and fight everybody over what's written in somebody else's book. We don't need somebody who's going to stand up and advocate for what man wrote. We need somebody who's going to advocate for those common things that Jesus gave us. The Lord can sort out all of his own details. My point is, you have a lot of people who adopt these ideologies. These are weapons of division and cannot be proven either way. But they will fight for them tooth and nail. They'll curse you out if you tell them they're wrong. And we don't need that. Those things we cannot have here because they won't be Christ-centric. They're always going to have some worldly figure that they're going to give reference to and place above somebody else's view on something else. The truth is we don't know. But we do know what Jesus Christ said. We do know that through revelation, all of us can have the truth. And in the minute standard, here's what we normally do. We'll pray for something. The next 2 or 3 days, we'll see what answers we have. If it's the truth, all of us will agree perfectly. Now, we don't sit there and we write down our answers. Now, this is amazing. Suppose everybody wrote down their answer. They turned in that answer in view of everybody right there, and then somebody read all the answers. Suppose 99% of those answers are written exactly alike. You know that's from the Most High. That's what we accept as truth. If there are too many differences in it, we cannot use it. If it's not aligned, we cannot use it. See, because in that minute standard, we rely upon revelation from Christ for real, not the play stuff, the real stuff. So if it does not align, we can't even act on it. We can't do anything with it because the Lord is he's not divided in any way. And when he works, it's going to be exactly alike. I get passionate talking about it because we've experienced this so much. Yet you have a lot of people, they say they love the Lord, but they can't even believe in what the Lord will do. And the Lord desires that all of us know him this way. And you will know him that way based upon your loyalty to him, not to some author, not to man's works. The Bible says, cease ye from man whose breath is in the loins. And all too often, we put our trust in men. And then we sit up doing what? With a frown on our faces because something didn't come out right. That's why I told everybody in COT, I will fail every expectation you have. So don't put your expectations in me. Put your expectations in the Most High. That's why I never put my expectations in people. A person can't keep my standards. I don't want them to either, because all of us are unique. You're one of a kind. There's only one like you. And you're critical to what happens during these days. I love the truth. As a consequence, and because of who I used to be, I can't stand the words of men. I can hear pride. I can hear men boasting. I speak against that term, common sense, logic, academia, all those things. That's not centric in my faith. Jesus is. That's the name given to us. We can call God by no other name. God, by the way, is a designation. It is not his name. Jesus is the name that we were given. You start mentioning Christ, that's when people pop up and say, well, his real name wasn't that. That was written so that the people would do this, that, and the other. No, I believe in Christ, period. And that will never waver. And we are in critical days. And although everybody is needed, unfortunately, everybody won't participate because they will not agree to be Christ-centric also. They won't agree with that. See, folks, listen. This is why we have to be ever so careful in these days. We have to really give an effort to focus ourselves on Christ, on his principles, his word. Stay away from all this other stuff because it will be a distraction at the wrong time. These are days of establishment. They can be beautiful days for those who love the Lord. But we all know that with an opportunity comes a great time of regret. Like the times we regretted we did not give all of our attention to Christ at certain times in our lives. Well, this day we can follow him in truth. This day we can go forward in truth and never have that regret in the days to come. If you don't want to frown on your face in the days to come, then give your all today. We know that a frown comes on our face when we leave things undone and we don't see the outcome of Christ. Because we did not conform to his ways and we did not believe in his ways. Well, today is an opportunity to erase that frown. It really is. Because you'll look back on this day. You will look back on this conversation and say, I remember when we had that conversation and I did absolutely nothing The Lord, the Bible teaches us that many will have deep regrets because they did not hear. They didn't take the moments given them to prepare, to seek the Lord with all of who they are, not half of who you are, all of who you are. And if you don't want to be those who regretted what they did, then take advantage of this day the Lord has given. Do all that's right in this day. And if you wake up tomorrow, do it again. And if you wake up the next day, do it again. And do it as much as the Lord is willing to give you a day of His that you may occupy it. But be Christ-centric.